This was a deadly, difficult, and disturbing weekend for our city. I want to note with deep sadness the injuries and the terrible loss of life the collective Portland family has endured. I'm grieving along with those who've been impacted by this weekend's events. I also want to convey my steadfast and my urgent determination to find those who are responsible and bring them to justice to end this cycle of violence. We created the Enhanced Community Safety Team, a group of select on-call officers that provide a rapid response to gun violence. We also assembled the Focus Intervention Team, which is now actively investigating gun-related crimes. This newly assembled team is our best defense at preventing and investigating gun violence from a law enforcement perspective. And that goes alongside significant investments we've made in the community through our Office of Violence Prevention. We funded the expansion of 311 to reduce 911 wait call times. And this directs non-emergency calls away from 911 so that police officers can focus on emergencies like these. We'll fund an expanded Portland Street response and public safety specialists to make sure that we're sending the right help to the right call. We're actively working to recruit and retain our best officers to better protect Portlanders, and I've set a goal to hire 300 police staff over the next 3 years to get closer to minimum staffing levels for the Portland Police Bureau. My administration will continue to lead and prioritize public safety, and we're not going to stop until peace returns to Portland. Our purpose for this press conference this morning is fourfold. First, we'll provide a summary of what we know and what we can discuss regarding all 3 shooting incidents this weekend. Second of all, we'll ask that all Portlanders help our investigators get these dangerous people off our streets. A safer city is a city where our community works together to prevent violence. Third, what the Police Bureau and what our law enforcement partners are doing in the days ahead to help achieve a ceasefire. And fourth, we'll hear from our acting Oregon U.S. Attorney, who will announce an expanded and coordinated partnership with federal agencies to bring Portland's gun murders to an end, to bring justice to those who've helped perpetrate them, to use the powers of federal laws, federal prosecutors, and federal courts, as well as federal prisons, to bring them to bear to help us address this issue. I want to thank my colleagues at the Portland Police Bureau, the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the Oregon State Patrol, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, and the FBI for recognizing the urgency and agreeing to meet with me this morning. I also want to thank the Office of Violence Prevention and our local community-based organizations who've been working firsthand on these issues over the weekend and well beyond. And with that introduction, now I'd like to invite Portland Police Chief Chuck Lovell, who will provide an update on information regarding the recent shootings in Portland. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. Again, thanks to everyone for being here today. This was probably one of the most deadly and challenging weekends our city has experienced. It's also one of the most heartbreaking. People are dead, people injured, lives destroyed over senseless violence. Right now, the level of gun violence, the increasing homicides is wearing on the community, as well as our officers, supervisors, and investigators. We had 3 major incidents this weekend we're going to discuss today. I'd like to note that we had the same on-call team responding to all 3 of these to investigate as well. I want to take a moment to thank the men and women of the Police Bureau, the officers, sergeants, criminalists, detectives, supervisors, all the support personnel in the PIO's office, everyone who responded to the tragedies and continues to work every day, work hard to serve the city. So I'll do a short recap of the incident so we're all on the same page. The first incident we'll discuss is the officer-involved shooting that occurred in the 900 block of Broadway Drive. It began with a suspicious disturbance call at around 6:42 p.m. on Saturday. En route to this call, officers were informed that shots were fired. Officers instructed residents in an apartment building to shelter in place, and at 8:33 p.m., an officer-involved shooting occurred. The shelter in place was then lifted and an investigation began. We have a thorough and exhaustive process to investigate any officer-involved shooting, and we're working through that process now. We've identified the officers involved, and it's up to the medical examiner to release the name of the deceased after families notified. The district attorney is in charge of these investigations, as he will bring it to the grand jury. We understand our community wants transparency and to know more about what occurred. However, we must ensure that we gather all the evidence, conduct all the interviews, and protect the investigative process. The second incident was occurring at the same time on Saturday evening, and we're dividing our resources in order to respond to both of these scenes. Officers were dispatched to a shooting incident at 55 and Hasselo, Northeast. It's near Normandale Park, and this was around 8 p.m. This was a very challenging and dangerous scene for many tactical reasons. Obviously, responding officers didn't know who the shooters were, how many, where they were at, and other details. Officers had to separate those present who were providing medical assistance while also trying to move other people out of the crime scene so evidence was not compromised. Many witnesses were uncooperative, and unfortunately, someone chose to take critical evidence from that scene. Officers were able to secure the scene and get the victims additional medical assistance. We ultimately found one person deceased and 5 injured and determined it was a confrontation between an armed resident of the area and armed protesters. We've released the name of the armed resident this morning, as well as an appeal to bring back the evidence that was taken. Our investigators continue to work this case, but once again, the district attorney's office is in charge of the investigation. And the third incident occurred at the 128 in Southeast Foster on Sunday evening around 10:30. Officers were dispatched to a shooting of people in a vehicle. They found a woman deceased, a man critically injured, a 1-year-old shot in the leg, and a 5-year-old shot in the arm. Little kids injured by gunfire is especially heartbreaking to me and to everyone, I'm sure. Once again, this investigation is continuing, and we'll wait for the medical examiner to release the name of the deceased after families notified. And to the media, I want to acknowledge that this was a challenging weekend for you as well. We understand you have a job to do and you want answers and availability that we just couldn't provide for good reasons. We're a victim-centered and trauma-informed agency. We protect our victims and we do not identify living victims. When deaths are a part of an investigation, we have a process through the medical examiner's office to determine the cause and manner of death, provide the identification and inform family members of their death. We never want to go outside this process for any reason. I understand the need for information, but our investigations don't occur at the same speed. We want witnesses to come forward and provide information that they know firsthand, not something they've read or seen on TV. We must verify their accounts and they indeed were at the scene and saw something. When we talk about protecting the integrity, that's a big part of it. So I apologize that sometimes we can't give you what you need. Moving forward, we're discussing internally and with the mayor's office and local and regional law enforcement partners, ideas to provide additional resources around gun violence. We're offering additional overtime to our focused intervention team officers and our enhanced community safety team officers and investigators, and extra overtime to the presence in the area. We'd like to have a larger presence in the streets with the understanding that we know the community is suffering and unnerved by the rise in gun violence. And at this time, I think Scott Asphaug, acting U.S. Attorney, will take it from here.
Thank you, Chief. I'm Scott Asphaug. I'm the United States Attorney for Oregon. We've joined together too many times over the last year to talk about gun violence and the effect that it's had on our community. We've mourned the loss of lives. We've seen the funerals, and all of us are heartbroken by what's going on in our city. What I'd like to talk with you about today is what we in the federal law enforcement arena are doing to help the city of Portland and to work with our local partners to reduce gun violence. In particular, my office, the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Oregon, has rededicated its efforts to focus on gun violence. We have added a specific team, a dedicated team of assistant U.S. attorneys whose sole focus is gun crimes in the metro area. And we are prosecuting more gun crimes than we have ever prosecuted before. Further, we are working closely with our federal, state, and local partners to address gun violence in the metro area through what's called the Portland Area Crime Gun Initiative, or PAC-G. That group includes the FBI, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Multnomah County District Attorney's Office, Multnomah County Sheriff, Gresham Police Department, and many other members of the Portland area law enforcement community, to look regularly, sometimes daily, at shooting investigations, and work very closely with the district attorney's office to determine where cases should go for appropriate prosecution. This focused team is going to work. We are looking at cases every day. We are going to do what we have to do to reduce gun violence in the local community. The FBI and ATF, they actively support these local agencies and investigations with their forensic expertise and equipment. That includes ballistics and DNA analysis and other resources to quickly link shell casings to guns with active shooters. The quicker we can make these links, the quicker we can save lives. We further support PPB's efforts like their new focused intervention team. PPB is the backbone of our region's gun violence response, and we will continue to do everything we can to support and supplement their work. The consequences of state or federal conviction will make some people think twice before resorting to gun violence, but not all. So we also thank the mayor's office and all of his efforts to look at the deep causes and root causes of gun violence and to work in the community for the community's support to reduce gun violence. One area of community support that we must have is people willing to come forward and identify what they've seen. For us to make cases against individuals engaged in gun violence, we must have people willing to step forward on behalf of themselves, on behalf of those lost, and on behalf of the community to say what they've witnessed and let law enforcement do its job to prosecute and convict those individuals who have committed crimes in our community. In the time I have as United States Attorney for the District of Oregon, I'm going to do everything I can to work with our local partners to make sure that the federal law enforcement community in the District of Oregon is doing all it can to support the work of the Portland Police Bureau and all law enforcement here locally. And with that, I'll turn it over to Multnomah District Attorney Mike Schmidt. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you everybody for getting here today. As we've said, there have been 4 shootings in the last 72 hours in our community. These shootings have spanned, they've been from the east side to the west side of our county, and we've lost 3 lives. First and foremost, my heart goes out to the family members who have lost loved ones, the community members who have lost loved ones. When a person decides to pick up a gun and use it to threaten harm and take away another person's life, it doesn't just happen in a vacuum. It hits all of us. And as you've heard from all of us here, we feel it deeply, as do the community members across Multnomah County. As your district attorney, I'm committed to holding perpetrators of violence accountable to the fullest extent of the law. Likewise, I'm overcome with gratitude for the people on the front lines responding to these tragedies. Police officers at the scene, the prosecutors who go out in the middle of the night to join them to help lead these investigations, and community members who are willing to come forward and assist us in investigations. I'm grateful to all of you who are helping us solve these cases. Our office has issued 16 cases related to gun violence in 2022 so far alone, with more pending review. As the U.S. Attorney said, we're prosecuting more gun violence cases than ever before. Last year, we issued 206 cases for prosecution. And if you want to track that in real time, you can go to our website at mcda.us, and we have a dashboard so you can see the cases that we're bringing. As everyone in my office worked diligently to review the facts and the evidence of each shooting, issue charges, and prosecute, we hold these truths to our hearts, that victims deserve justice and that harm cannot and will not go unaccounted for. The suspect in the Saturday's Normandale Park shooting has been identified. He's currently in critical condition, and we're working closely with PPB detectives to review the case and the facts and make a determination on charging decisions. And I'm going to leave that at that for today. So thank you for having us here today, and we're doing everything we can to work these cases. I'm going to turn it over to Special Agent in Charge, Kieran Ramsey.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Again, you've heard this repeatedly from all these leaders. So a couple of things I'd like to highlight. One is the incredible partnership that we continue to have across federal, state, and local agencies. And it's not just law enforcement, it's other agencies such as Portland's Office of Violence Prevention and the like, to make sure that this is a whole of government effort so that we can do two things really. The first and foremost is to stop the shooting, to get this to stop. We are in unprecedented territory again this year. Whereas last year, law enforcement, especially Portland Police Bureau, continued to sound the alarm of record-breaking violence on the streets of Portland. This year, we are already on pace to easily surpass that level. So we are in a sense of urgency that can't be explained enough or reemphasized enough between federal agencies, state agencies, local agencies, and that partnership is an everyday occurrence where we try and make sure we are bringing everything we can where we can, be it technical resources, financial resources, or even investigative resources. The second piece is to bring justice to those that have already been cut down, to bring justice to those families that are suffering right now as we sit on this call, that are grieving enormously because they've lost their loved one in a situation where it is far too late, and perhaps they were at the wrong place simply at the wrong time. So with that, in partnership with Oregon Crime Stoppers, the Safe Streets Task Force continues to try and offer rewards, to plead with the community to step forward. If you have information, please cooperate with law enforcement. If you're concerned about retribution or retaliation for cooperating with law enforcement, let us know. There are a lot of things that we can do, especially at the federal level, to protect your identity so that you can safely provide that information that perhaps could bring justice to those grieving families like those this weekend that have already lost loved ones and are sitting at home right now suffering enormously. So again, I'd like to thank our partners. We act with a sense of urgency every day. This is a continuing collaborative partnership. And again, I'm confident that as our efforts move forward, we will have that necessary impact, but we still need the community's cooperation. We still need the community's assistance as we come together to try and stop this violence. Thanks.